The importance of history is to give us context, to let us know that we aren't the only thing that's important here and now, that some of the stuff that we're arguing about now has been argued about before, and the frustration that people have with the way things are now comes from what went before. And until they really understand what went before, attacking those problems can be an act of futility. A few weeks before the election, I had a couple of hapless canvassers show up at the house. They were young. They were in their 20s. They were sincere. They were canvassing for McCain. And by the end of the conversation, it was quite clear that they didn't understand the first thing about the history of voting rights in this country. And it appalls me when I run into people who just don't know. And it's happening more and more, because in spite of the fact that I still think of myself as roughly 29, the fact is I'm 54, and there are people who are walking around as adults right now that were born after Reagan came into power. And they just don't know. They don't pay attention. They're not being told what happened in the 60s or the 50s. Whatever they're being taught about World War II and its consequences, I have no idea. History books that are distributed in schools are comical in what they leave out. Now, I understand that they have to cram an awful lot in, because you have to go through one of these things in 1 year or 9 months of the school year, so you have to make shortcuts. But, I guess it was 20 years ago, I was leafing through a high school world history book, or an American history book, and I stumbled into the section on the Vietnam War, and it made the claim that the Vietnam War began at the Tet Offensive. And I kind of had to blink at that, and I said, well, that's absolutely not true. But then I thought back to all of the different dates that have been attached to the beginning of the Vietnam War, and which one is more valid than the other? You could argue that the Vietnam War that we know began in 1947, when the first American was killed by French machine gun fire, because he was a troublemaker and was trying to tell the State Department that they needed to knock back the French when they were coming back into Vietnam to secure their colony, basically. And he was a nuisance, and, it was an accident. Sorry about that. He was murdered. Or you could say that it was 1963 when there was a coup in Saigon, and Kennedy began to back the new regime. There's some evidence that he was beginning to realize that we were being shucked and jived about that and was thinking of pulling out. Or you could say it was the Gulf of Tonkin, which gave Johnson extraordinary powers. Or you could go all the way back to 1919, when Ho Chi Minh showed up in Versailles begging the conference for Vietnamese independence. If you're going to reorder the world, we have been a French colony and oppressed for years, and please let us be free. So which is the appropriate date for the beginning of the Vietnam War? How do you cram all that in a history book that's giving you 1 page or 2 pages to deal with this crucial thing? But I still find it appalling, because that just doesn't begin to address, why were we there? If the Tet Offensive was the beginning of the Vietnam War, well, we had an army there. They'd been there for 4 or 5 years. What were they doing there? I mean, this just rankles me. I think people would be less reactionary if they knew more. As to whether or not they'd make better decisions going forward, I have no idea. Because you're entering terra incognita with the future. But we would certainly be less prone to button pushing by pundits and demagogues if we understood more about history and the past. You wouldn't be able to run roughshod over a crowd of people with your ill-informed ideas, simply because they are even less informed than you are. And why would they take you? Why would they think that you're not telling them the truth? You're standing up on stage. You must know something. You've got a good suit on. You know how to speak well, and this is how things are. Why would I gainsay that? We would all, on the flip side of that, we would also know when somebody's not to be dismissed. That the position politically that we have is either you buy everything somebody says or you buy nothing that they say. And neither position does anybody any good. Formal education gives you the tools with which to learn. You don't learn a damn thing in formal education. You take the foundation that it gives you. You've learned how to read. You've learned how to use a library. You get a basic framework that suggests that there is a past, and that past has led to the present, and there are reasons for the things that happen now, and those reasons are part of that past. Now, you've learned how to read. You've learned how to go through a history book. You've learned how to go to the library. Now, get your education.